Hey everybody, my name is Rich Garcia Jr. and I invented the Sleeplight art frame, which is what we're looking at here. Basically what a Sleeplight art frame is a wooden frame with slots cut into the inside to hold multiple layers of clear plexiglass panels at set distances to add more three-dimensional look to your paintings. And we'll take a look here. As you can see, you see pretty good amount of depth coming from there. And there's under here also, you can see all the way to the back of the painting. Now, these things don't videotape very well, so I will be adding pictures, still pictures of what these look like. It will be a representation of what you would see with the naked eye. Now, the way I came up with the Sleeplight name for the frame was when I was making my first one. I was watching the painting and the paint started to fade, so then I got drowsy. So I set it up in my room. I could see it from where I was in bed. I turned it on while I brushed my teeth, get ready for bed, and I turned it off, got into bed, started looking at the painting, started to dim, and before I knew it, I was conked out. So I decided, maybe I'll just name the frame the Sleeplight frame. And that's how I came up with that. So I've always been obsessed with glow-in-the-dark paint and glow-in-the-dark objects as a kid. So when I found the glow-in-the-dark paint online, I decided I wanted to make glow-in-the-dark paintings. So I was inspired to try this out. I think it worked out pretty well. But what I'm covering in this video is actually the prototype version that I did. So let me turn this one off and I'll show you the other version over here. So this one here is the prototype that I made back in late 2015. And this one doesn't actually have lights installed in it. I just have them kind of taped in there so I can get the thing glowing for you while I talk about it. This is what I'm referring to as the easy version of the Sleeplight frame, which is a Shadowbox frame that's been converted into a Sleeplight. What I wanted to do for this first video is go over this because not everybody has a chop saw and table saw to make their own frames. So this is a good way for people to make a Sleeplight frame without having to build your own frame. So basically get a shadow box and modify the inside. I'll cover all of that. I'm planning on opening this up and talking about what I did to convert it into a Sleeplight frame. And I'm also going to show you how to install the lights. And this frame's a little bit different than the new frame I picked up, and I'll talk about some of those differences also. The other thing I wanted to talk about was near the end of this video, I'm also going to talk about a few of the custom colors that I've mixed and made. And then I also wanted to go over, I'm going to have some videos go up after this video, which are mostly just reference videos for the regular Sleeplight frame. They're going to be kind of boring. It's going to be mostly just numbers and pictures with writing on them. But it will be a good reference guide for anybody who wants to kind of look ahead and see the types of materials and tools that they're going to need for the next video. Because I'm planning on doing more in-depth videos after that batch of videos goes up, where I'm actually making the Sleeplight frame from the sketch design all the way to the finished frame. And I'm even going to cover how to package them in a box to ship them and reduce the amount of damage that they may take during shipping, if any at all. So far I've shipped 3 lights and none of them have been damaged, so I think it's a pretty good method of packaging them for anybody out there who's planning on selling these. Once again, I'll post pictures of this frame at the end of this segment so that you can see what this one looks like when it's glowing. And I will catch you on the next segment. electronic components laid out and all the tools you will need to be able to convert the Shadowbox frame into the Sleeplight frame. So I'll go through the items one at a time. These right here are the UV strip lights. The information is right here on the label. I get these from Wholesale LEDs. It's one of the only places I found that has the 3-chip UV lights that are bright. If you're going to order from them, make sure you get, there's 2 different versions. This version here, hopefully everybody doesn't get too seasick while I'm holding the phone. This is the lights here. This is the 16-foot roll of lights. If you're doing the small paintings, you could probably get quite a few out of this, depending upon the lengths that you want to use. When I do my bigger boxes, they're about 1 foot by 2 feet, and one roll of lights will probably get you about 4 paintings that way, if you're using the same types of sizes as I am. Let's see, they come with these screw-in holder things, but I don't really use those. And then you got the wire leads on the one end, and then the barrel connector on the other, right here. Now if you cut off the barrel connector here and install a switch, then you don't need to keep the barrel connector on, and your wire leads will be right there on the first one that you do. Basically, I'm going to try to do a soldering version of a clip here, but I may not have time. And I don't want to delay posting this video much longer because I want to get things going. So there's plenty of research videos on soldering and getting a good solder joint for your electronics online. So I suggest maybe watching one of those, because those guys are really good at soldering, and I'm still kind of trying to get good at it. Then we got the switch here, which is from Super Bright LEDs. I get most of my power supplies there too. This is the label for it, all but pictures of all of these labels at the end of this segment, so you can order if you want. It's got the technical information on what it can handle. These have a few different settings, which I like about them, because like the painting I showed you before with the pirate ship getting attacked by the sea monster, I have lightning up in the sky, and it's not too spectacular, but you can have the strobe setting and slow it down so that it looks like the lightning's flashing. It's kind of a cool effect for that painting. But these switches are actually cheaper than just on-off switches, and they have a plug here, and basically what you're going to do is cut that plug off and then strip the wires, and then you can add them to the leads that are coming out of the barrel connector here. If you cut that off, and then this will serve as a switch, and then also the barrel connector on this will connect to the barrel connector male part on the power supply. Now this is the power supply here. You can't really see it too great with the glare. This is also from Super Bright LEDs, but they changed the part number. So what I'm going to do is post a picture of the power supply information from the back label of the new ones that they have, and it also has the part number on it, so that way if you're going through Super Bright LEDs, you can get the proper rated power supply for the LED strips. These LED strips here come in a plastic sheath, which is weatherproof, and I kind of prefer these because when you cut this off, the LEDs below inside, they don't have adhesive strip, because I find that when you're doing the really long lengths and you're trying to put them in the larger frames, sometimes if you go off course, it can be a pain to pry them up with the adhesive on the back. Whereas this, I just use the LED double-sided tape here, and I just tack it at the end, and then I'll use staples to fasten the lights to the frame. But we're doing something a little bit different with this frame. We're going to just put the lights in with the tape and leave it like that, because with the Shadowbox frames, one advantage you have is they're very easy to open up, take apart, and work on if there's any maintenance, or like if the lights start to sag, you can refasten them with a new piece of tape. So then I have the wiring here that I normally do. It's 18 gauge lamp wire, and I would say just make sure that it's bendy and not too stiff, otherwise you're gonna have a wire that's bent crazy, and it's kind of hard to keep the plug going in a good direction behind the painting, so that it's kind of hidden if you just have the wires in there, however which way you do it. The other good thing about this particular wire is one side, I don't know if you can see it good, my aim is terrible with this camera. You can't see it too good there, but one side has lines like grooves in it, and it's kind of more square than the other, which can be good for telling the difference between your positive and negative wires, so that you can keep them separate. So when it comes to attaching the switch and everything, there's not really any guesswork. You don't have to trail anything back, and you can label each wire up near the end of the solder point which one's which, and you're going to have to keep track. That way you have the wiring done properly. The other thing I have here is I have the wire cutters. I definitely suggest wire cutters with the different gauge wires on there, and since I'm using 18, I have the exact right size to get the insulation off the wires without losing a bunch of the braided wire inside, which is very good to have. So that pretty much covers for the electronics part of what it is and the way to cut the wires and stuff. The next part is going to be the soldering iron, which we have here. I have a cheapy one. I might upgrade to one with temperature control and stuff like that, but this one was like 20 bucks, and it's worked so far. But like I said, I'm trying to get better at soldering, so I might get a better soldering iron. And then of course I have the stand for it here. The one thing about the cheap soldering iron is it comes with an equally cheap stand. It's kind of flimsy, so I just ordered one of these online and it works out great. The solder I'm using is a very common type of solder. It's electrical rosin core solder. It's a 60% tin, 40% lead mix. I think that's probably the industry standard type of thing for solder joints for this type of electronics. Let's see. The other thing I've been doing is I staple in the wire. This is just an electric stapler with the standard type staples for the width, and I'll use this to tack the wire leads from the LEDs going out of the frame so that they stay in place. And then what I'll do is I'll hot glue around the solder joint part and the staple near the wires towards the soldering joint, and that'll help stabilize the LED strip and the wire from rattling too much and breaking your solder joint. Let's see what else we got here. I got a hammer here and a flat blade. This is for tapping in the edges of the staples so that you get a nice snug fit around the wires. I got black tape. When I do my joints, my solder joints to the LEDs are soldered in, but my connections between the wires coming from them and the controller switch, I always just twist those together and then put insulation on those, because I wanted to create a weak spot where the wires would break apart rather than break at the solder joint at the LED strip, because then you got to resolder it and all that stuff, and it's much easier to just trim more wire and reconnect using the twist, and then twisting the wires and then using insulation on them. So then we're starting to get into the drilling the hole in the frame part. You got to have a ruler, so that way you can accurately measure where to put the hole, the mark for the hole. And then what I have here is I have an electric drill, and I have the countersink bit. I started using a countersink bit just to put a divot where my marks are, because I've had a lot of trouble with the drill bit migrating off the mark, and you kind of want to keep it pretty accurate, especially when you're doing the other frames and you're doing the screws for the corners to hold the frame together. So I always use the countersink bit to just put like a nice little round divot. That way the tip of the drill bit doesn't kind of wobble out of the hole or anything like that when I'm starting it. When I'm doing wire holes, I usually use a progression of drill bits. I go from a very small one all the way up to the size I'm going to actually need. Now, the wire leads on the particular LED strip I'm using are kind of thin, so I don't really need the hole to go that big. But if you're using 18 gauge wire, to do your wiring, you're going to want to make sure you have a bit that's big enough to fit 2 wires through the wire hole. So you're going to want to probably fold up some wire and then tape it and use that as a kind of a guide to see if you can fit that through the hole for the wires. Then you know you can fit the 2 wires coming from the LEDs going out of the frame. That way you won't have any trouble and have to try to drill the hole bigger while you have the LEDs fastened into the frame. The other stuff I have here is I have a clamp and 2 pieces of scrap wood. And what you're going to want to do is, before you drill the hole, after you make your mark, you're going to want to clamp 1 piece of wood on one side of the frame where you're going to have the drill bit exit through the frame. And then on the front part, without covering your mark for the hole, you're going to want to have the frame in between these, and then say the screw hole somewhere up here. And you're going to want to drill through the frame and then through this piece so that you don't get splintering on the exit part of the drill hole. That'll help keep a cleaner look and a more professional finish to your painting. Then down here I have the foam that I use to make the, I guess you would call them fasteners. What I did was I basically cut the foam, it's a firm foam, cut it into the length and squareness of the inside of the frame stoppers to hold the panels. I don't know technical terms, frame stoppers. So basically you're going to cut this up and then put Velcro on it, the scratchy part of the Velcro, and that's going to be on each spacer. And then down the frame you're going to have the fuzzy part of the Velcro going down the frame of the corner, and then these squares attached to it in between the panels, so that way you can support the panels and keep the distances proper. And then of course I got scissors to cut the Velcro and stuff like that. So this pretty much covers all the tools and the electronics that you're going to need. And then in the next segment I'll be talking about the actual frame and showing you how to put the wire hole mark and drill the wire hole and mount the wires and install the lights into the frame. So I will catch you on the next segment. Okay, we're back again. Now, there's one thing I wanted to cover before I go any further, and that is a little bit about the safety. Please be careful when you're using all the power tools that I suggest. Use safe practices when you're using those. And I wanted to show you the table I had all this stuff laid out on. There's all these crumbs and stuff just from them sitting on the table. Now, when you're going to be using the stapler or any of the metal products like corner screws, fasteners, all that stuff, they're gonna probably have metal flakes. So be very careful. Don't touch your eyes after handling them until you wash your hands or make food or anything like that. Then I want to talk about the lint roller. This is probably one of the one things I use the most out of all the stuff I've showed you, because this is great for picking up the dust particles. As you can see, it gets rid of all the metallic flakes and dust off your work surface, which is good to also keep your panels from being scratched. Even though you do get away with quite a bit of scratches, fingerprints, smudges, and lint inside the frames, because when they're glowing you don't really see that stuff. I've even had frames where I've had pretty bad scratches in the panels, and I know where they are, and I can barely even see them at all when I'm looking for them in the painting. So I'm going to reset the next segment, and we're actually going to crack open the prototype frame, and then I'll start talking about that. So I'll catch you on the next segment. Okay, we're back, and we're ready to crack this thing open. So this is the prototype frame. This is what it looks like in the regular light. It's a real basic frame. It's just basically the top panel, the middle panel that I added, and then the painted back panel. This one has a slide on the bottom here, which I thought originally was a good idea because I was gonna put like the painting on a stand and have the UV lights going underneath, but that was before I realized that they made the strip lights that were UV lights. So anyways, let's flip this over here, undo the latches for the back, and pull that out. And then, so the back panels for these, you'll usually have like some kind of foam and then cloth glued to the back. You just take that off, scrape off the glue residue, and then you can paint it black and start painting on it. What I did was I did a real thin coat of the black paint twice and let it dry completely each time, because if you try to just cover it up in one shot, it might be too much moisture and it might cause the back to bow. So don't try to get it all covered in one shot. Kind of give it a chance to dry. That way it becomes a little more water resistant to the moisture from the paint. I had a frame bow really bad on me when I used to take them apart to paint them. Now I keep them together till I get the first couple coats of paint on, then I'll take them apart to finish. Works out much better. So let's set this aside. And as you can see, in here is the one panel, and I've got the corner spacers. We'll take those out. These are velcroed in. It's just basically a piece of foam, hard foam, that has the scratchy side of the Velcro on it. I use the heavy duty Velcro. It can take up to 10 pounds of weight when you hang it on the wall, which is excessive for this, but I like to make sure the panels are in there nice and secure. So all you do is you cut the strip to match on that, and then inside the frame you would put the fuzzy side of the Velcro. So let's take these out. These are also cut to the right length so that the back panel will sit against them, so that you get a nice snug fit, keep the panel in place from rattling around too much. So I just do them in the four corners. They don't really show too much in the painting. And then as far as the panels, use acrylic panels, not polycarbonate, because the paint does not like to stick to polycarbonate. I made that mistake once. I bought a bunch of panels thinking, oh cool, they're even thinner than the 1/16 of an inch, and it didn't work out so great. The paint never seemed to dry and it scraped right off. So unfortunately, the only piece of plexiglass I had available to me when I made this frame was 1/8 of an inch thick. Let me tip this out of here. Just kind of shake it out a little bit. So it's 1/8 of an inch thick. And I accidentally got the wrong kind. This is like some kind of privacy stuff, where the further away it gets kind of fuzzy. So you want to make sure you get clear acrylic panels for this. And I suggest 1/16 of an inch to help cut down on the weight. Unless of course you wanted to get like a deeper look to the front side, back side, because I paint on the front sides and back sides of these, and if you get a thicker panel, you can kind of give the illusion that something's a little further back. I usually stick with the 1/16 of an inch. You can usually pull off some pretty good optical effects with those. And as you can see, I painted around the border. One of the things about doing the Sleeplight frame out of a Shadowbox is when you have the panels in there, they kind of concentrate the light to the edges, and you can actually see around the edges of the panel in the frame that there is like a light line. So in order to eliminate that, you have to paint a thin border around each part of the panel, and then you also have to paint the edge to help block the light transference to the frame. because that kind of takes away from the whole illusion when you can see the light going around each panel. As far as the thickness of the border, I would say if you're doing like a thicker panel, like a 1/8 of an inch, then you're going to probably want to have at least 1/8 of an inch of a border going across the very bottom. You only have to do the front side on the bottom. The back side is not painted, but of course you also have to do the edge. As far as how many panels you can fit, of course it depends how deep your frame is. This frame's only like 3.5 inches, so I only had room for one panel. I'll show you how to tape this off to paint it shortly after I go through the frame and the setup. When I go to put it back together, maybe I'll hit that up and show you how to tape it off to paint the edges. Set that aside. And then also, before I go any further, you can see that there's a bunch of scuff marks and stuff where I accidentally painted galaxies before I really realized the anatomy of the universe, where it's like, you know, stars are kind of in front of the nebula because the nebulas are huge, and the black holes and everything are bigger than stars. So I kind of screwed up and then went back and scratched these off, but they don't even show at all when you're looking at the painting when it's glowing. So it's not really a big issue if you kind of screw up. As long as your scratches aren't too deep, they shouldn't magnify the light and show up very much. And then as far as inside the frame, I have the Velcro strips here in the corners, all 4 corners. And what I did, I'm not exactly sure if this is necessary or not, but I nailed in the first spacer. That way I didn't have to have a spacer touching the glass, because I think it's best if you have the spacers kind of close to the thickness that you need. That way the panels stay more stable inside the frame. Of course, you're not really going to be shaking around. It's going to kind of be sitting on a shelf, but who knows. Oh, on one very important thing that I forgot already. As you can tell, I kind of shoot from the hip when I do these videos because everything's in my head. So you're probably going to hear me stutter, stumble, reiterate myself several times saying the same thing. But hey, we're all human, right? So the important thing about these frames is the inner diameter is going to be different than the outer diameter. And this one's a 12 by 12 frame, and that's in reference to the inner diameter. So when I cut this panel, I cut it 12 by 12, and it was a very, very tight fit. Now you're going to want to have at least, I would say, probably a 1/16 of an inch going around the whole panel edge, so that these come in and out without scraping off your paint. And they're very hard to remove if it's too tight of a fit. So this one here kind of fits in pretty good. Well, I think I got this one going backwards. So just give it a little bit of a tap, get that to come out. So this one here actually goes in this way. So then you can see how it kind of fits in there. This one, like I said, I cut it the same size. So what I ended up doing was I ended up using wet dry sandpaper in a sink and sanding the edges so that it fit. It's still kind of a tight fit, but hey, it's a prototype and I'm not really messing with it anymore beyond what it already is. I'm just kind of showing you guys what I did to set it up. The other thing is the way it's holding the glass in is it's got these angles glued into there. The newer frame, I'm not sure if it's even angles or not. I think it's just flat all the way up to the glass. But you're going to want to make sure you leave yourself enough room for the strip lights to go in and enough room to drill the hole for the wires to come out of the frame. The other thing that's unfortunate about the Shadowbox frames is it's real glass on the front, so you got to be kind of careful. If you can find them with plexiglass on the front, I would definitely suggest getting those because they're more durable. And also when you're painting on the glass, I don't know how well the acrylic's going to stay on the glass. It's probably more porous than the acrylic panels, but when you go to paint on the acrylic panels, you're going to kind of want to score them so that the paint has a good tooth to grab onto the panel and it doesn't flake off later. But I'll be covering that much more in depth when I hit up the regular frames and I go through the painting part of the procedure of making those frames. So as you can see, I just used small like picture frame nails and just nailed the spacers into all 4 corners. And then I also have a little strip of the fuzzy side of the Velcro in there, and that is to attach the spacers for the panels to the frame to hold everything in place. Let's see, what else did I want to go through here? Oh yeah, so when you're painting the edges of the frame, keep in mind that the black edges on the panels are going to kind of disrupt what you got going on. You can kind of work around it for this one to to keep the optical illusion going, I kind of didn't paint black paint over the green part here. It kind of works, kind of doesn't, but you can definitely paint in between the panels, and you know, since you're doing such a thin border, it probably won't interfere with the look of everything. The best thing to do is do what I do, is I just experiment along the way, because I'm a self-taught artist, so I just kind of go with it and see what happens. The other thing I was going to say about the panels, when you go to get them cut, like the other frame I have is a 10 by 10 frame, and that's in reference to the inner diameter. So when you get your panels cut, I would get them cut like for a 10 by 10, it would be 9 and 15/16 of an inch going width and height. That way you have a nice good gap so the panels come in and out very easy and don't scuff your paint off the edges. As far as the cost, let me grab the new one. Let's crack that open. I got that sitting over here. So this frame I got at Michael's. I will be revisiting the Shadowbox frame version of making a painting, because I have an idea for this one, but I wanted to get the regular Sleeplight frames out of the way because they're much more involved and take a lot more steps to make. So this one here, it's 10 by 10. I don't know if you can see that with the glare or not. Kind of lame with the aim on the camera. So it's 10 by 10. That's in reference to the inside. So if you're going to get plexiglass panels cut, you're going to want to have them 9 and 15/16 for the gap. So let's crack this open and take a look. Let's see what this has. That might be different on the inside. So this one, I already picked off the foam and the cloth they had, and this is the glue spot. I just haven't scratched it off yet. You can see how it's brown inside. Let's see. Okay, so this frame is more of just a flat surface up to the glass. So this newer frame would probably work out good. This one was 50 bucks after taxes at Michael's. But again, it's got the glass in the front. One of the things I would do different, let's set this aside, is for this frame. Before I really knew about the lights, I didn't expect to be putting lights in, but on the regular frames you'll notice that I do a black border painted where the lights are going to go. So that's one of the things I would have did different with this if I knew what I was doing when I first did them, is I would tape it off. On these you probably don't have to go too deep to hide the lights. I'd say probably about a ½ an inch going along the border, whichever side you're going to put the lights on. I usually do a light strip on the top, light strip on the bottom, then have the wiring meet up at the bottom corner somewhere and coming out of the frame. So let me go over that real quick. Okay, we're back again. I had to answer the front door. So where was I here? Okay, so the lights. This is the strip light I'm going to be using. I'm kind of doing the easy lazy version because these already have the solder joints for the wires are already on there. This is basically what it would look like if you take the barrel connector, sleeve, and connector off. Since this frame has the slide door in the bottom here, I'm going to have to probably have the wires just come out the, let's see, I get dyslexic sometimes when flipping things over. So this would be the left side. This is where I'm going to put the lights. Let me move these out of the way real quick. So this would be the side I'm going to put the lights on here. And to kind of get an idea of where they're going to go, have them go probably out to there. They come there. I might trim a little bit off. That way I can just have the wires come out of the frame right here on the left side, because I don't really want to have the string going across here. There's not a lot of room to fasten them. So that's what we'll be doing here, is I'll trim a little bit of the lights off. And of course, if you're familiar with LEDs, they have the little cut segments right here where you can cut them to length. Some places actually sell lengths of the LEDs with the wires attached to them, so that might be good if you're not so good with the soldering iron. They are a little more expensive that way, and the best way to buy them is with the roll. You get much more for your money that way. Let's see, we're gonna need to mark the screw hole. Let's see here, it's not gonna be there. So in order to do that, you're going to want to make sure you get the ruler. So basically, I'm going to use this side because it's not missing a chunk. So you're going to want to see how far up you're going to want to have the hole. The hole's coming out through this side here. It's going to be down here in the corner. So it looks like, including the 1/4 inch for the border here that's holding the glass in, that's about a 1/4 inch. So we're probably going to go up to the 1/2 inch mark on the other side of the frame so that we can place the hole in the right spot. And then we're also going to go from the inside part here. Looks like we're going to probably do the same, go about a 1/2 inch going up from the inside edge of the frame. That way the hole clears the bottom panel. And let's see here. Okay, that was the wrong side, and there I go, getting dyslexic already. So then what we're going to do is this frame has a very thin border on the top. Looks like it's about a 1/16 of an inch or so. So we're going to start the measurement from the edge of that so that we get the proper distance going. So what we'll do is we'll do the height thing first. And looks like the edge for the slide compartment makes it a little bit higher. So we're going to go up the 1/4 inch for the inside border. And we'll give it a little bit extra because it's not too crucial to have the wire too close to the bottom. You can kind of give yourself a little room there. And then we're going to go up to right about here as far as the height of the hole. And it's not going to be too big of a hole. That's one thing you got to think of if you're going to have the 18 gauge wires coming through. You're going to need a bigger hole for the wires, and you're going to want to center the mark for the hole to where you're not going to dig into the frame in the spots that you don't want to drill. So then our other measurement, I said it was going to be a 1/2 inch starting from this very small border of the frame piece. So we'll go up a 1/2 inch right about there, and then where these two lines will intersect, that will be where you're going to put the screw hole mark. Now unfortunately, what I suggest before you nail in the spacers, if you're going to do that to secure the first panel, you're going to want to probably drill the screw hole for the wires, or the wire hole. You're going to want to drill that first. That way you don't have a problem getting the scrap wood in there. So what you're going to want to do is, I'm going to have to get a little creative on how I use the wood blocks for this one because I already have the spacers in there. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have this is the way you would do it. If you didn't have the spacer there, you would have the bigger block here because it's going to be easier to drill through the frame that way so that the glass doesn't get in the way of the drill. And then it's like, say if the mark was here, right? Then you would clamp the other piece of wood here like that with the wood clamp going this way on everything. Clamp it together so that you're not blocking where you're going to drill the hole with the front piece. And then this one's in place so that when you drill through, you don't get the splintering on the wire hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this up after I put the divot in for the drill hole. I'm going to, there it is right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the countersink bit and put a little bit of a divot so that the drill bit does not migrate out of the hole when I'm starting to drill it. And I'll have the wood clamped on there and drill the hole. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that in the garage because I try to limit how much sawdust and stuff is in my work area for painting and finishing the panels and everything like that. So what I'm going to do is go in there and I'll take some still pictures of the process. If you are stuck doing it all in one room, I suggest putting down like maybe a bath towel or something to catch all the sawdust so you can take it outside and shake it. Or if you have a patio, access to a patio, do all your drilling and sanding and stuff like that out there to keep your work area fairly clean. So I will catch you on the next segment. Okay, we're back again. So now I have done the drilling of the wire hole. See, I'm lost already. Here we go. So what I did was I drilled the hole, and then I painted over it with black paint to cover up the wood color underneath, and I allowed that to dry completely before I started shooting this, so we're ready to go to put the lights in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the double-sided LED tape first. That way I get that going where I want. Take off the cover on it, that's the other side of the tape, and then I'll attach the lights, and then we'll fasten the wires. Before I get going too much here, I went and put black tape on the wires because these are very thin and the insulation is very thin. So when I use the staple gun, I don't want it to damage the insulation. So I put a little bit of black tape right there for where I'm going to staple it, and then of course I'll cover the solder joint and the staple with the hot glue dab to prevent breakage of the solder joint. So first thing you're going to want to do is, if you're not sure about the length, double check, and we'll be going into the frame like this right here, and the wires will be coming out of the hole, so it's about the right length. So if you can see, you just kind of eyeball it. I'm gonna have the lights end right where the nebula ends, and it's just the right amount to put the wires going through the wire hole. So in order to measure off the tape, you can either use a ruler and try to measure it off that way, or you can set this down like this and kind of eyeball it. And the other way, if the LED strip's not too long, you can just kind of go to the beginning of the roll and hold it on there, and then you can start where the end of the tape is, kind of just keep it on the roll as you go around until you get enough to secure the whole LED strip. I go all the way to where the solder joint is, that way it's even the whole way through. So what I'm going to do is grab a marker, grab this, and then put it just a little mark so I know where to cut it. Just right there like that. I got the scissors here, and we're going to cut this and roll it. Gotta be kind of careful because this stuff is pretty tacky. You don't want to get lint and stuff stuck to it. So when you're cutting, I suggest kind of giving it a little bit of room to put your fingers. Go ahead and cut it. Put that there. Okay, so I said the light strip was going to start pretty much where the nebula is right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to, let's see, what's the best way to show you here. I don't want to start having dyslexia attacks, so I'm going to keep it there, and then I'll show you what I did on the inside. So we're going to have to go next to the beveled part on the inside here, and there's just enough room to fasten the wires to the frame right above the bevel. So we're going to keep the tape pretty much right on top of where the edge of the bevel is. So we'll start here. Maybe better to start like this. So then just go ahead and put the tape down like that. I'm going off course already. Let's redo that, because the LED strip is the same width as the double-sided tape, so you're going to want to make sure you get the tape nice and flat, so your LEDs are going to sit right on top of it nice and snug. So go around the edge like this. Hopefully it won't go off course too much. I'm going to have to keep messing with it. Now, doing the other Sleeplight frames, this stuff is much easier because you got the frame is opened up and flat, and you can do all your soldering and fasten everything on there a lot easier than this. But of course you have to build your own frames to get to that point, and these are kind of easier that way. So we'll go around the corner and then keep going around. And then, so basically when you attach it, you're probably going to end somewhere around here, and then the wires are going to have to bend through the frame to go through the wire hole. So then, now that you got that in the right position, we're going to have to do the same thing with the strip lights. After we take off the cover there for the top part, I just use a hobby knife with the razor blade, kind of peel that up. This stuff can be pretty difficult to get. Well, I'm almost thinking it might have been easier to put it on the strip lights. Or maybe even peel up the corner before I started. Let's see here. See if I can get this thing to cooperate. Okay. Alright, we're going to have to go old school. Just peel the whole thing up. Try to separate it. Oh, this is really gummy. Kind of keeping me from getting the tape off. Of course, be careful if you're using a razor blade so you don't cut your finger. Alright, well, I got the cover off, but it doesn't want to let go of the tape. Okay, we're gonna have to get serious with this. So, what I'll do is I'll hold the sticky stuff down and grab this with some pliers. Wow. Really hard to grab that. Really gonna be this difficult. Okay, let me grab some different pliers. These aren't grabbing it. Alright, so hopefully it won't take you this long to get this going. This shouldn't be that hard, but there we go. See? Can't defeat me, right? Cool. So then we take off the protective coating on the top. Might need these again. So then we'll take our lights over here. So same type of thing. You're going to want to make sure you keep it, you know, if you have the exact length, you're going to want to keep the LED lights starting right where they start, and hopefully they'll end right where they're supposed to. So go ahead and put that on there. This is the first time I've actually put lights in a Shadowbox frame, by the way, so this might get a little messy. Let's see how it turns out. It's kind of difficult working around the corners, so what I would do is don't push too hard into the corner, that way you don't damage any of the electronics that you're putting down here on the tape. And let's move this way. I don't even know if you can see what I'm doing. Let's check here. Okay. So we got the strip light going down. It's kind of going a little off course, but hey, it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. It's more about how the painting looks and not about the aesthetics of the inside of the frame, really. Okay, so that's about right there. So give it a little tap, make sure it's nice and secure on there. And normally what I would be doing is I would be, if there was enough room, I would be tacking the LED strips at these points here in between all the electronics with like staple. And usually what I'll do is I'll cut the legs shorter if they're longer staple, or I'll get the 1/4 inch length on the staple with the wide, it's called a power crown. It's a wider top that's wide enough to put a staple in here without puncturing the LED light. And I would put a couple of those. I'd put like one here, maybe one here, and then one near the solder joint, and then also one at the end here. But like I said, these frames are a lot easier to open up, and I don't think it's really going to be that big a deal to fix the lights if they start to sag. So in this part here, be kind of careful that you don't break your solder joint, and then take the wires through the wire hole like that, and then you should have at least a little bit. I usually like to have a little bit longer wire, but like I'm saying before, I kind of doing the easy version because the leads are already attached to the LED strip. So, and then the next part's going to be kind of a challenge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to tack this with a staple gun, but it may not fit in there. So we're going to give it a try and see what happens. The next part after that is going to be to put the hot glue on the solder joint. So I'm going to go ahead and hook up the staple gun because it's an electric one, and I'm also going to hook up the hot glue gun to start heating up to kind of save some time. So I'll catch you on the next segment. Okay, we're back. Now I've got this is an electric stapler. It's an Arrow T50. One thing to go over is it's got an on-off. I always make sure I turn it off after every time I use it. That way I don't actually staple something, or me. The challenge for this is going to be, this has the, it's kind of like a switch. If you don't depress this all the way while you're pushing into what you're going to staple, it won't fire a staple. It's kind of like a safety thing. So hopefully I won't puncture any of the wires with the staple, because I actually have that happen before. So we're going to give it a try. I may have to cut and then you know, fix the situation and then come back on the next segment. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's set the frame up. You may not be able to see what I'm doing exactly, because since the wires are coming through the frame and I'm actually stapling it on this side, I'm going to have this part hanging over the table so I don't break the wires off or anything like that. So let's see what we do here. Go ahead and turn this on. It's got staples in it, I think. Probably should have checked. So then I'm going to kind of move the wire away a little bit from where it is so I can get clearance from the glass. Put it in there. Alright. So turn off the stapler. Safety first, right? Okay, so I've never used that stapler on the hardwood or the wood of those frames, and it looks like since I had it tipped sideways, it kind of put the staple in a little flat and mushed, but it's actually in there pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it. 'Cause I don't want to mess with it too many times, because then I'll have to rewrap the insulation. These are stuck. So you can see how sometimes things can be problematic if you're not prepared to handle them. Okay, so that's the part with the staple. I'm only going to put the one staple in because unfortunately the LED strip is kind of close to the edge here, and I don't think I'm going to get away with putting another staple in because this one barely fit in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to make a big blob of the hot glue going from the staple and then covering the solder joint to help fasten it to the frame. The first thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to test the lights and make sure they're still working before I go through all the trouble of gluing them to the frame, because if they're not, then I'm going to have to pick them off the frame. So I need to go in the other room and get one of my other controllers that's ready to go, because I want to show you how to cut the plug off. Well, actually, let's just do this one. So what you're going to do, so one thing I forgot to mention is I have some heat shrink tube for the wiring. And I'll show you, I usually slip that over the wires so I don't forget to add it before I tie them up and you know, do all the insulation taping. So I'll show you what to do here. So you're going to want the plug here. You're going to go ahead and cut that just like that. Get rid of that. And then you're going to want to give yourself a decent amount of room. What I like to do is, since these are going to be wrapped, I clean off a decent amount of insulation from the switch, and especially when you're doing two separate wires from the lights, because you're going to end up twisting those together and then you have to twist this with those, and it ends up being, it works out better when you have, I don't know, about an inch of copper wire exposed to do all the twisting, so you get a good connection. So then we're going to take, not actually sure what gauge these wires are, so I'm going to play it safe. I know they're not 18 gauge, so I'll try that first. Let's see, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they are 18 gauge. Oh look, that worked just fine. So looks like the controller wires here, if you have the wire cutters with the gauges on them, the 18 works good for these. So I'm going to go ahead and twist the braided wire in there. And I'm going to kind of do the same on the other side. Try to be careful you don't bend the wire too much, because you might break off some of the finer wires in here. There's not a whole lot in these. So I'm going to twist these together. And then obviously up here you have your positive and negative marks on the controller switch. The red is positive and the black is negative. So keep that in mind when you go to hook them up. And the convenient thing is on the LED strip lights, so you got a black wire and a red wire, so you don't get confused on which ones are connected to what. So as a test, before I glue the hot glue gun part, I'm going to test the lights and make sure they're still working and they didn't get damaged when I put in the staple. So this is Super Bright LEDs, also sells these battery packs. It takes 8 AA's. I usually use these to do the testing because I don't want to pop a circuit breaker or anything if I accidentally cross the wires. So what I'm going to do basically is just touch the wires to the matching wires for the frame and make sure the lights light up. Now when you're doing the testing, make sure that you hit the light button and turn them all the way up, because I've actually tested strips and didn't realize I didn't turn it up, and I thought the strips weren't soldered in good. And man, I felt like an idiot when I went to go redo them, and I tested it one more time. I was like, yep, sure enough, the switch was off. So I go ahead and hit that, and even if it doesn't light up when I do it again, I'll try it one more time. So these batteries should be pretty good. So go ahead and try them out, and the lights work. Here, I'll move that so you can kind of see it better. So just touch the wires, and as you can see, they're lighting up. So we're good to go. So set that aside. So then, as far as the controller, before I forget, I'm going to show you what I do with the shrink tubing for the insulation. Is I put it over the wires and then kind of push it over just the beginning of the fastener. That way I don't forget to put it on before I connect all the wires, because I've actually done that one before too. So now we're going to move on to doing the hot glue for the frame. And remember, the wires are coming out, so you can't just set it down flat. You're going to have to set it off the table a little bit. So let me see if I can get the camera going. There, you might be able to see a little better now. One thing about the hot glue gun is, other than it having a pretty short cord, sometimes you're going to get a bead of glue on the end of it, and it's best to just kind of wipe that off so you don't get too messy. And be aware this tip is hot. So then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to have my towel ready because I'm going to have some drippage. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to want to make sure the glue's going in there, and then you're going to want to cover the staple part, and then take it all the way up to where the LEDs are attached to the wires. And I always make sure I get a decent gob on here, because I think that's going to help. Like if the frame gets bumped pretty hard or something, it won't break the solder joints. And also, like if you're packing these to ship, it's also a good idea to do this. That way when the guys throw your boxes around, it won't break the solder joint, and then whoever bought the painting is going to be disappointed because it won't light up. So I'm done with that. So I always put like a towel down, a paper towel or something, to cover up the table so I don't get drips of glue on it. Let me go ahead and fix this back to where I had it. And then this is going to take a few minutes to dry. If you can see it in there, you can see the gob of glue right there. So the other thing you can do is once this is dry, if it's showing up in the painting too much, or you don't like how, like maybe it's reflecting in the light, you can paint it with the black acrylic paint to kind of cover that up. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a few minutes to set, and then while we're doing that, I'm going to go over the switch just for a minute here. So these switches, they usually come with a little booklet. Just real quick on the controls. When you hit the light button that's labeled light and you hold it down, that will turn the lights all the way up, and it'll be regular, just on. And then if you want to change the mode, like say if you wanted to do like blinking mode, or maybe you're having a rave at your house or something and you want to have a strobe light going, then you can hit the mode, and then this would be the speed control for that. So that's a little bit about the controller there. And well, looks like this is taking a sweet old time curing, so I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and I'll catch you on the next segment when I'm ready to go to finish up adding the controller switch. Okay, we're back again. So it's nice and cured now, as you can see. Took actually like about 10 minutes, maybe even 15. So now we're ready to add the controller switch and do the installation for it. So set this here. I got the black tape. I use this before I put the heat shrink over it to insulate the wires from each other. I'll show you how I wrap that. Got some pieces already cut. You'll need scissors to cut things, and you'll need a lighter also to shrink the heat shrink. So now, one of the things you want to do is when you twist them together, you're going to want to have one bent over one way and one bent over the other way. That way they stay even. So you get a nice even mix. So like one will be bent up that way and the other one will be bent that way, so that the wires stay relatively where they are. Otherwise, if you try to bend them both one direction, then you end up with a big wad, and doesn't work out so great. So we have the heat shrink is on there all ready to go, so I don't forget. The wires are ready to be attached to the other wires. So you go negative to negative and positive to positive. So let me make sure you can see what I'm doing here. So then here we go. Gotta bend that one out of the way. We go negative wire on negative wire. And twist these together nice and tight. And be sure you don't bend these too many times, because you might also break the wires if they go back and forth and get bent too many times. So we got that one on there. And then we'll do the positive wire, same thing. Twist those together nice and tight. So then what I'm talking about is so you're going to want to have one set of wires going this way and one set of wires going the other way. That way they stay, in the same type of position. Because if you try to go the other way, you end up with like kind of a crooked wad, and then it's really hard to fit the heat shrink tubing over. So let me grab the black tape from over here. I've got a couple of pieces cut already. I use a shorter piece first, and what I'll do is I will go in like this right here, so that I get both pieces of insulation and most of the wire, and I will fold it over once like that, so that way you got them enclosed. And then the little tip down here, I'll start wrapping it around the wire, going down towards where the exposed wire is. Usually you only have to go around like maybe twice. I think I cut too much tape, but these are thin wires. It's only one set of wires. But when you're doing the 18 gauge wires, you're going to want to be a little more conservative with how much black tape you're using, or you're going to end up with like a big wad of it. And then let's see, there you can see how that one is. And then we'll go ahead and do the other one. So the other one, I have a slightly longer piece of tape, and that's so I can wrap it the same way, but also include the other one in the wrap. So same type of thing. You get it to where you get both wires insulation part, fold the tab over, and then I go around once on the wire itself, and then after I go around, I'll stick the wires together. Now when you're doing this, make sure you don't have any of the wires touching the other polarity wires, otherwise you'll have a problem. So we're good there. So then I'll wrap around both sets of wires. I do these kind of tight, and go a couple more, one more time around like that. So then there you have the wires. Now there's a little bit of wire sticking out here, but I'm going to put the insulation sleeve all the way up to the frame, so that will cover that easily. So then we slide up the insulation. Be careful not to pull your wires apart, obviously. So that goes over that like that. And then we're going to have to use a lighter to shrink it. So be careful you don't melt the insulation off your wires, or go too far and melt a hole in your insulation sleeve. So one more time before I seal that up, I'm going to go ahead and hook up the battery pack and make sure the lights are still working. And as you can see, they're still working. So we'll unhook that. And then we will kind of roast the insulation Alright, get that ready. So the best way to do it is probably to have it hanging off the table. Let me go ahead and move the camera so you can see. And there we go. So, carefully light the lighter, kind of cook it a little bit. You can see it actually shrinking, and try not to breathe the fumes. I don't really think the fumes are very good to breathe, so make sure you're doing this maybe in an open air or have a fan going or something like that. I'm just kind of holding my breath. And we'll do this other side here, like that, and that should be good to go. The one thing you're going to have is, after you use the lighter, you're going to have a little bit of soot build up from the flame hitting the insulation sleeve. If you, I believe if you go a little further away with the flame, you still get the heat shrink effect without the carbon residue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe that off with a paper towel, and then I'll, pause it, take care of that, and then we'll put the frame back together and we'll go over testing lights one more time. So I'll be right back, and I'll catch you in the next segment. Okay, we're back. Now that we got the lights in there, we're going to be ready to go to put this thing back together, and then we'll go ahead and test it. So start with in this painting, it's the middle panel. Let's make sure we put it in right. So I'm going to slip this in here. Right like that. And then we have our corner spacers, holders, whatever I called them earlier. Whatever you decide to call them, that's what we'll call them. So then put these in here. One in that corner. One in this corner. And this corner here. And this corner here. And then we have the back panel, so make sure it's going the right way. Put that back in there. Close it up. And then don't forget, now that you got the wires on there, you want to be kind of careful with how you're setting it down. Let's grab so on this frame I have this trapdoor thing here. So then we'll go ahead. Oops, I read it backwards. Yeah, I got dyslexia bad today. Okay, now that that's in there, I'm going to go ahead and tape it shut. Hopefully it doesn't slide open on me when I'm talking about stuff. So, as far as the bottom, usually what I'll do, let me grab some Velcro real quick. So, most of my frames, when I finish them, they don't have this trapdoor like opening on here. But what you would do is you would cut the fuzzy side of the Velcro to the right length, and then put them on the bottom. That way, when you set the painting on tables and stuff, it doesn't scratch the surface. It also gives it a nice finished look. You get you set it down, it's nice and quiet. Pads the table or shelf, whatever you got going on, and keeps from scratching things up. So since I have this door on this one, I'm not really going to do that. I'm just going to keep it taped shut. And then let's see here. We'll go ahead and we'll hook up the battery pack. We'll check it out. Got the light full on. And let me hit the lights here. And there you go. You got the lights in now. And like I said before, these things don't video very well. And I've already put pictures up. Let's see. One thing I can do is unhook it. And as you can see, it doesn't glow very well on video. But you can't really see the lights. And you can't really see any of the corner spacers. So that's how you do that. Turn these lights back on. And hopefully you guys out there that are interested will give this a try, because one of the things I love most about art is seeing other people's art, and I can't wait to see what other artists come up using these frames. The next segment I'm going to do, like I said before in the beginning of the video, I'm going to cover some of the custom colors that I made and talk about the paints for a minute. So I will catch you on the next segment. Okay, so we're back again. So since I'm hitting up the custom colors I made, I thought I'd go ahead and hit up how to paint the edges, the border edges for your panels. So basically what you're going to want to do is for the top part of the panel, you're going to want to tape it off so that you have the thin border going, and then of course, you know, you're going to want to paint it. It's going to probably take about 2 coats, maybe 3. Of course, if you're familiar with acrylic paint, if you try to put too many coats on at once, you're going to end up pulling paint off. And then you do that around all 4 sides, and then basically what you're going to do to paint the edge is on the back side, you're going to put the piece of tape going past the panel edge. Make sure it's on there real good, and then flip it over, and then of course you would paint the edge part here, and it also takes a couple of coats. So that's how you would do the border around the panel on the top part, and then also how to tape off for the edge. And you have to do all 4 edges of the panel. The border just needs to be on the front part of the panel, and then of course the edges, you're only doing the edges. So then let's come over here, and usually what I do is when I make some colors up, I've had trouble in the past trying to remember what I did to get certain colors, so I made these tabs. And it's basically just pieces of the palette paper, the wax covered palette paper, with a dab of the color, and then on the label I'll write what the paint is on there. So what I'm going to talk about is some of the colors that Technoglow has. That's where I get all of my paints. It's just been one of the companies that has a wide variety of colors, and the paints are quality. There is the old school colors, which are usually zinc paints, zinc sulfide and like calcium sulfide and stuff like that. And then you have the newer paints, which is strontium doped with europium. That's kind of the new style. They're a little bit brighter, they glow longer, but unfortunately my dilemma was, as an artist, I wanted to be able to have a yellow glow paint, because every company I've tried, they're yellow. It always has type of kind of a green tint to it. And what I did was, by accident I found this out, was I had some of the zinc sulfide, I call it gold, but it's actually referred to as orange on the website. And I didn't have any coloration in it, and I went to grab some more, and in the paint cups I had also had mixed up some aqua, and I accidentally grabbed some of that and mixed them together before I realized what was going on. And I happened to turn on the light just to see what it looked like, and I realized it kind of made it more of a yellow glow and less of an orange glow. I did that for a while, and then they also have a color called pineapple yellow, but that also has a green glow to it. I started mixing that with the zinc sulfide gold. And then they came out with a lemon yellow color that is also a zinc sulfide color, but it too has a slightly green tint. So what I did was I ended up mixing about 50-50. I mixed the zinc sulfide orange, which I'm calling gold, because it's a little brighter than the strontium gold, or orange. There I go, mixing things up. And then I mixed it with the lemon yellow. So this tab right here is the lemon yellow, which is also a zinc sulfide color, and the zinc sulfide orange. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the UV lights on so we can see how it glows. Turn off the main lights. So as you can see, it's kind of bright with the light on it, but I'm going to let those charge for a second, and then I will turn off the light. So as you can see, that is the zinc sulfide gold or orange, and then this is the lemon yellow mixed with the zinc sulfide orange. So it's kind of hard to tell from the video because this stuff doesn't show up too well, but you'll definitely notice a difference when you're looking at it right in front of you. The other color I come up with, Let me turn the UV lights back on. The other color I came up with that's kind of a custom color is I noticed that nobody made like a brown. And I tried a few different ways of trying to make a brown, and none of it really worked out so great. I tried mixing green glow-in-the-dark paint with red glow-in-the-dark paint, but the red's so dim it didn't really show up the same way as if you were mixing regular acrylic colors. So what I did was I ended up taking the zinc sulfide gold, since it's such a bright orange color, and I basically just added brown acrylic matte colored real brown color paint to it until I got it to look brown when it glows. Now this one might not show up very well at all, but it definitely has a brown look to it to the naked eye. And actually in my reference videos I have a painting that I did that's kind of an abstract space painting. It's like a tree on a green hill with clouds in the background that are nebula, and I use this brown color to do the tree. And on the picture, the still picture, you can really tell that it's actually a brown color glowing. So let's see what this looks like. So yeah, it's super dim, but to the naked eye it's not such a bad glow power. So yeah, you can barely even see it. Which what I can do is at the end of this segment I'll show pictures of the paints glowing next to each other, so you can kind of see the zinc sulfide orange, the zinc sulfide and lemon yellow mix, and then the brown. And down here you can see this is like a regular orange color, the strontium, and you can see it's much more of an orange color, a little bit brighter of a glow, and you know, but unfortunately it does not work very well for making the yellow color. Let me turn the light back on. The other color I made up, the other colors I made up are kind of a gray. I'm sure other artists have probably figured some of this stuff out. But basically what it is it's the white glow-in-the-dark paint, and I mix the ivory black into it until I get the right type of tone to the gray color I want. And you can make two different grays. You can make a light gray, which is different from the white paint, and then you can make the dark gray, which is darker than the light gray, which works out really well if you're into Star Wars or painting spaceships. You get like the metal tones. It works really good for painting the Death Star because, you know, they have the gray panels and then the darker gray panels and stuff like that. So let me turn off the light and see how these turn up. There. So these ones glow a little bit better. You can see down here you got the white at the very bottom, and then you got the light gray, and then you got the dark gray. But again, these actually look much better with the naked eye, and I will also include pictures of these at the end of the video. The other thing I was going to do is, since I pretty much exclusively use the, let me get the lights back on here so I don't trip over something. So I pretty much exclusively use the Technoglow colors. They're a good price. They also have a whole another set of colors. You know, they got like photochromatic colors, they have neon colors, stuff like that. And it's also one of the only companies that I found the zinc sulfide colors available at. But I didn't look very hard, and you may find companies that you prefer. But as far as making a more true yellow, I would say probably order the zinc sulfide orange from them and the lemon yellow zinc sulfide color from them. Because out of all the stuff I've tried to make a yellow color, that's the best one. The glow duration's not that great, but you know, yeah, it is what it is, and you know, you kind of get stuck with what they make. You can't really make the stuff up yourself. You can only kind of mess with it and mix it. The other thing I wanted to cover, one of my favorite colors is the red. They have a calcium sulfide red. Stinks really bad like rotten eggs, but it charges super easy in regular light, but the glow time is very, very short. So a little trick I figured out to, because I like to put red in my paintings, and you know, it's one of my favorite colors. So what I did was I put regular white acrylic paint, then I put the white glow-in-the-dark paint on that. Because anytime you put white glow-in-the-dark paint on regular white paint, it kind of brightens it to the maximum glow. And then what I did was I tinted a regular strontium color of red with a little bit of transparent primary red, and then I put that over the white. I do like about 2 coats of each type of paint, And what happens is when the red starts to dim, it's actually still glowing from the white backlighting it. So that's another trick to get your reds to show up. And then, like I said, I will be doing other videos. I'm going to post the reference videos first, and then I'm going to start working on the more in-depth videos for the regular Sleeplight frame, where I actually take the painting from the sketch design all the way to framing it and packaging it for shipping. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I appreciate you watching. Anybody who's interested in learning more, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next episodes. Have a good one.